I love area control games, and two-player games are the games that I get to the table the most, so naturally I am very interested in this one. But on top of all of that, I have already read the rulebook, and I think the gameplay for this one looks like a ton of fun. And also, since this is being published by Mindclash Games, I already know that the production on this is going to be absolutely fantastic, which I do appreciate. And for all of those reasons, this one is going to be my own personal pick of the week. And like I said, this one is a dueling area control game, but each player is also going to be playing as their own unique faction. There is the nature-based woodwalkers that start in the forest and remain there for the entirety of the game, but then they also have some special tools like their vision cards, which you're going to be using in order to locate your totems out on the map. But in order to win the game, you not only need to find those totems, but you also need to secure them by bringing them back to the outer forest. But then we have the industrial-based Ironclad, and just like the woodwalkers remain in the forest for the entirety of the game, the Ironclad remain in the mountains. They also have some special tools like a drill that they can use to mine for crystals, which is a currency used in the game. But their goal of the game is to spend those crystals in order to build foundations to eventually turn into forges, and then build 3 forges in order to win the game. But whichever faction you play as, you're going to be taking their faction board along with their starter cards and deck of cards and all of their unique fighter units. And the way that the cards work for each of the factions is that you're going to have 3 starter cards that always come back to you at the start of each round, no matter how much you've used them. But then you're going to have a faction deck of cards, which you'll be drawing from periodically. And the cards there are normally one-time use and get discarded immediately after you've enacted their effects. But some of them can have ongoing effects as well and may last for a period of rounds. These cards are the main way that you're going to be performing your actions throughout the game, but something that's really cool about them is that each of the cards are dual use, so if you choose to use them for their action, you'll just be able to do the ability outlined on that card, but if they're used in combat, each of these cards is going to have an amount of damage, defense, and dominance, which you'll be using to determine the winner of that battle. But the game's played over a series of rounds where at the start of each round, each player is going to be gaining a certain amount of crystals. The woodwalkers just gain 1, whereas the ironclad are going to gain 2. Players will then draw 2 cards from their faction deck to add into their hand, and then always starting with the woodwalker, players are going to be playing 3 cards alternating back and forth. And these cards are going to be offering you a variety of different actions and abilities, but some of the more basic actions offered on these cards are to move your units around out on the board, and anytime that you are moving a woodwalker, they always move individually, whereas the ironclad can move as groups. There's also actions that could allow you to draw even more cards from your deck in order to give you more options on your turn, and of course, depending on your faction, there might be actions that allow you to draw specific cards, like the vision cards for the woodwalkers, or in the case of the ironclad, you might have cards that allow you to move your drill around on the board or build up those forges. In order to attack another player, you do need to be adjacent to them, and you also need to play a card that allows you to attack. And each time you do that, both players are going to have the option to wager a card from their hand into the battle, essentially adding the strength, defense, and dominance of that card onto their side of the battle when it comes to resolving and determining the winner. The way that works is that you're going to be comparing the overall strength and the overall defense of each side, and this could be modified by different units and effects currently going on in the game, but each player is going to be removing a unit for each amount of damage that gets through, and the player that has units left is going to be the winner of that battle, often getting special effects outlined on their card. But if both players survive, then you're going to be resorting to the dominance values, and whichever player has the highest dominance wins the battle, and if that is still a tie, then it's the attacker who wins. But once both players have played all their cards for the round, then each player is going to be able to spend crystals in order to purchase additional units to deploy out on the board. But the game continues like this over a series of rounds until a player is able to trigger their win condition. And like I said, for the Ironclad, their goal is to build 3 forges. And in order to do that, they need to control a specific mountain and then play the appropriate card there in order to build a foundation and then a forge on top of it, paying whatever associated costs need to be paid. But then the forges do also act as new spawn points for new units, and they do add additional damage in combat, so there are some benefits to having those forges out early in the game. The woodwalkers need to discover their 3 totems using their vision cards, and each vision card is going to have a specific mountain specified, and if that mountain is not controlled by the enemy and you're adjacent to that mountain, then you can play a card with a discover action in order to reveal your vision card and then place a totem on your fighters that were adjacent to that mountain. But finding that totem is only half the battle because you still need to secure it by moving it back to your home forest. And in order to do that, you'll be carrying it with your units, and you can pass it off from one group of units to another. But you do want to do this quickly because at the end of every round, every totem you have out on the board that's not secured is going to fade. And you're going to be losing that totem if it fades completely, or also if your troop that's carrying it is defeated by the enemy. I really like what I'm seeing with this one, and it does look like a ton of fun, so if you're interested in it as well, you can go ahead and find a link to the page in the description below, and you can follow along to get notified once it launches.